Welcome to How to Be Alpha, a show exploring the essentials of having a personal brand and how to generate revenue using your own face and stories. I'm your host, Elizabeth Halford, and I've been curating my personal brand since 2008, when a career as a pro blogger landed in my lap. I became a well-known brand, generating a full-time income before that was really even a thing. I took a break, and now I'm back, bringing you all the juicy gossip to be alpha in your business. And by that, I mean being the best you can be, because your only competition is you, which is great news because it means everyone can be alpha. A few notes before we get started. Don't drive and take notes. Every episode has its own page at youisalpha.com/podcast. Also, please leave me a review on iTunes. You're a small business. I'm a small business. You know the drill. I might even read it out on air. Thanks for joining me. Let's jump right in. Last week, I talked about 4 ways that you can fortify your personal brand. And today, I'm so excited because I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite topics ever for business, and that is ideation or idea creation. It's also the introduction of a new format to this show. You're used to just hearing me sit here for a very short amount of time, talking straight to you, and I'm going to continue doing that. I think it's really valuable, especially since they're in very short bursts that are manageable on a Monday morning. And I also really value when the podcasts that I listen to bring professionals into my life who I may have never been aware of otherwise. And so I've been having a lot of great preliminary conversations with psychotherapists and coaches who are going to help us really dive in deep and dig into our minds and the way that we think and talk about things like limiting beliefs and thinking errors and resistance and the things that hold us back professionally and personally. So today's the first time you're going to be hearing an interview, and the tables are turned because it's actually someone else interviewing me. In 2017, I was a video producer at a creative agency in England, and I was invited to speak with my industry colleague, Tom Breeze, on the topic of techniques for generating ideas for marketing and advertising. Now, at the time, my commercial photography business was on the back burner, so a lot of what I'm talking about pertains to video advertising. Although the techniques that I discuss can also work for print, for copy, or for your brand photo shoot with me. It's also a really good glimpse into my mind and how it works and the process that I go through when you and I start working together on photography for your brand. The interview ended up being a 2-hour conversation, which is a video, and the link to that is available in the show notes for this episode. And rather than reinvent the wheel, I've extracted the audio to share with you here. I have taken out some things which I don't think apply to the audience for this show, like the nitty-gritty aspects of running an agency and managing a team, but you can totally catch up on all of that if you want to watch the whole video. I've also split the whole conversation up into a playlist of 30 tiny topics, and you can also find the link to that in the show notes. Today is part 1, and I cover how I fell into my career as a producer and a broad overview of the topic of generating ideas. In part 2, I'll start to really flesh out the individual ideation techniques that I love the most. In this part 1, around 26 minutes in, I discuss taking the strapline for a brand's product and then generating ideas which illustrate that strapline. But I want to define what I mean by strapline. On this show, you've heard me use the terms brand proposition and value statement. In episode 5, I gave you 2 steps for how to craft your brand or product's value statement, and this is really the same thing I'm referring to in this conversation when I say strapline. So I encourage you to go to episode 5, write value propositions for your brand, and then you can use those in your ideation process.
So Elizabeth, thank you so much for coming down.
Cool, thanks for having me.
My job today, my personal interest really, is to get inside your brain and understand how it works, and really kind of understand how your process works as well. I know there might not be a set way of doing things, and I know that you're probably going to talk about lots of different things, but I want to try and unpack your mind a little bit and then understand it a bit more in detail. So,
okay.
Do you want to kick us off with a little bit about yourself and how you got into this field as well?
Yep. So I would love to understand my own mind as well. So hopefully I can gain some self-realization or
self-awareness.
Self-awareness in this. So what I do, I'm who I am. I'm Elizabeth. I'm a American, born in the USA, but
Right.
I live here in Florida.
nice.
So I'm a Southern girl, but I don't have a Southern accent. And so I live here in the UK for 10 years. So I feel very British inside my head. I feel like a total hybrid of both things. I am, in title, I'm an executive producer. But in function, I'm just a creative. I am what I need, what I can, I draw on whatever is needed for the job. So sometimes I'm acting as a creative director. Sometimes I'm an account manager. I will go out and do pitches. I will take the team through ideation. I will manage the production of whatever it is we decide that we're making. And I'll take that through from, concept to delivery. So I can tick all those boxes. Technically, I'm an executive producer.
Because I see on your Instagram, I check on Instagram, and it's the Global Fire Creative page, isn't it? And so I go there and I see all these amazing shoots you're doing with different clients that you have. And I know that you've shown me a lot of the stuff that you're doing behind the scenes and the creative ideas that you have, and that's kind of I'd love to get to know that process a little bit further.
Okay.
But yeah, I love your Instagram. It's great. It's great to keep on top of or see what you're up to all the time, and I love the kind of behind the scenes and showing the team what you're up to as well as, or showing us what the team are up to and things.
Yeah.
So how did you get into this field? How did you get to where you are? I'm sure there's not just a simple, oh yeah, I just want to apply and become that person. Is there a Is there a way of does everyone go through this similar process, or is it completely different for everybody?
The most of the people, I am curious. I am a naturally curious person about the world and all facets of it. So when I meet people in my industry, I'm constantly asking them. So I'm always asking people, so how did you get in this role? How did you end up, the biggest art directors I've worked with, the biggest producers, and most of them just kind of fell into it, which is a really unhelpful answer for people who are working their butts off to try and get where I am today, whatever that means.
I just fell into it.
I just fell into it.
Inspirational story there.
So there's this thing called survivorship bias, which is the idea that in order to get where we want to be, we're looking at the people who succeeded at getting there rather than looking at kind of the graveyard of dreams that never actually happened. So for instance, a 12-year-old kid goes, Justin Bieber got discovered on YouTube, so I'm going to be on YouTube. I've heard kids be like, oh, I don't need school. I'm just going to be a YouTube star. What they don't see is the millions and millions of people who never ever make it. So we look at people who are doing what we want to do, who are doing what our dreams are, and we go, I want to be them, and I'm gonna I'm going to be able to become that way. And I guess we look at the steps that we think we need to take or the steps that they took to get there. But what we don't see is the millions and millions of non-Justin Biebers that are out there who never turned into Justin Bieber. So I never looked at people in advertising and went, I want to be in advertising. I just looked around one day and went, oh, I'm in advertising. And then I went to, I had some time on my hands. I'm a very busy person. I never ever stop. So I had launched one of my businesses, and it was 5 years old, and 5 years is that lovely mark where things are, pretty much taking care of themselves, and all the really, really hard work of building up to that point was done. So now my business was just ticking over.
What sort of business was it?
That was a photography business. It's still going. And so I had a few hours on my hand every week, and I thought, what can I do? So I decided I was going to go get a master's degree in advertising. I was interested in advertising. I got my job at Global Fire pretty much at the same time as I got accepted to ad school. So we decided that I was going to keep trying to manage both and see what would happen.
Where did you decide to say, okay, I'm going to go, so your business had got to a position where it's running itself and you had that free time. What was the decision, what was that kind of moment in time that you thought, okay, I'm going to go and do this now? Was it where you've been doing loads of research for ages, or was it just like an off-the-cuff moment? And just okay.
Like all of my decisions, it was just like, this feels good, I'm going to do this.
So you like that, you're spontaneous and you just go and do it?
Yes.
Love it.
And lots of stuff doesn't work out, but I try and be flexible and agile and go with the flow and see what happens. I try out lots of stuff. Make lots of mistakes, mess lots of things up, and drop a lot of balls. But a lot of things stick, I think, if you're brave enough to just go, oh, I'll try this. So I went to ad school and I tried. And I realized that a lot of the kids, and now I can say kids, if you're like 25, I'm like, you kids.
There's millennials
yeah.
now, yeah. Okay.
So technically I'm a millennial, but I feel like I'm about 70 years old inside my head. I'm a very old soul. But yeah, all these kids, their aspirations were to be doing, in 10 years after graduating, what I was doing then. I was in a small agency, so I had the ability to really make a big difference. It's hard when a lot of them had dreams of like going to the big London, gonna go to the city, I'm gonna go to the city. Yeah. And they will start out in a role that doesn't allow them to like have much sway because it will be a big agency. But I was in a tiny agency and I had a lot of freedom to try out ideas and to kind of go, I think we should do this and let's go chase this brand. And so I just looked around and realized that I was already doing what they were there studying to want to do. And I just thought I just quit.
Right. So you quit ad school?
I quit ad school.
Interesting.
Because I went, I had a couple of professors who did change my life. And when I look back with retrospect, I go, oh, that's why I was there, because I was meant to meet that person. I was meant to take that class. I was meant to learn that thing. And then, so I did everything but the dissertation, basically.
Mm-hmm. So you did all the learning, but then...
Yeah, I was like, okay, it's cool. It's in my head. I paid for the whole thing in one go, and I was just like, okay, cool. I got the knowledge, and next, which is how my brain works. I just bounce around a lot. So I realized that they are... working really, really hard to get where I am. And I don't know, most of the kids that I think did end up finishing that program, none of them are in anything remotely reflecting advertising.
Are you really serious?
That I can tell from like following them on Instagram or whatever.
What do you think that is?
I think it's this survivorship bias. I think it's this,
right,
this is what I want to do. This is what I perceive that these people did to get there. I will take those steps. I will get there too. Most of us just fell into it, So that's not to, I have a friend who has went into training to be a, I keep wanting to say barista, a barrister.
Yeah, two different things, but yeah, sound like the same thing. Yeah.
Both equally important in our lives. Wanted to become a barrister, which I guess in America is that like a judge? Like a big time fancy lawyer. Yeah. And he got a physics degree. And then you can kind of fall into law from that kind of jumping off point sometimes.
Because physics is so intense and therefore...
Right. So if you're capable of learning, at that level, then it's kind of easy to make the transition. And
cause and effects in physics and cause and effects in law.
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
Exactly. I get that. So I don't have a huge respect for doing things the right way. Mm-hmm. I think you can end up at points in a lot of different ways. The most important thing in life, no matter whether it's business or whatever, it's all who you know. It is not what you know, it's who you know. Because the stuff that we learned at ad school it was just a few years ago, a lot of it's going to be obsolete already. Yeah. So it's the people I met and the relationships I built and the connections I was able to make, the networking of it all, that makes the biggest difference. So how my job at Global Fire came about was I knew the founders and I saw one of them at the village Christmas thing that happens here in England. And I just walked up to one of them and I said, I think you can grow your business. I really want to work for you. Can I come talk to you? I went and talked to them and then they hired me. And it's who you know. And now being there, I get emails every single day from people who are like, hi, do you have any jobs? Hi, I want to do an internship. Hi, and I'm like, my heart goes out to them. They want to do work experience and stuff, but I'm like, more likely to give an opportunity like that to somebody who's I already have a connection with, who's already, who already knows us.
Yes.
Further solidifying the idea that it's all who you know.
Okay.
So they could be the smartest people ever, but we don't have the time to test those waters before deciding if they're a right fit for us or whatever.
I think I completely appreciate that because I think that the staff that I've worked with as well, it's like if they have friends that are kind of like who are like them, they're going to work with a similar ethic, and you're like, great, that's kind of like not carbon copy, but you know what I mean. You're going to get a similar ilk of type of person, and I think that a lot of the stuff that we've done through client work and things has become kind of like we get recommended to other big kind of companies because of the work we've done with the first company.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's the
Exactly.
referrals and everything comes from that.
Yeah, so yeah, the referral basis is all about relationship, and finding opportunities to do what you want to do is all about relationship too. And I think, I would say to people who are coming up who want to go into advertising or, marketing or whatever, find a small business that you can build a great success story for.
Yeah.
And, start from that jumping off point. You have to put in a lot of elbow grease. You're not just going to jump out of university and into an agency with a ball pit and beer on tap where you can ride skateboards around the office. It's like that stuff, those are fairy tales, the places like that, those people get those jobs because of who they know.
Do you think there's been a change over the last 5-10 years maybe of like seeing these Justin Bieber type personas and thinking, I want to achieve that, here's the pathway, oh, it seems like I took the same path but I didn't get the result? Do you think that's partly because the mindset they have going into that is like they've been trained throughout school, if you do this, this and this, you get the result sort of thing, and then it's like, right, when I look at my future, that's what the result I want, I do this, this and this, and therefore I get it. And then do you think there's some level of merit in focusing on what you want to achieve, or do you think like just go for it, just head in that right direction and see what comes of it?
Okay, well, there's 3 things that makes me think to say. Hopefully I can remember them all by the time I'm done blabbering, the first and second one. But the first thing is, I think the Justin Bieber phenomenon, I think has a lot to do with storytelling. I don't know that when the Beatles made it big, there's loads of information out there for their fans about the steps that they took to get there. It was like the music, here's the music, we're here. We're so obsessed with storytelling now that we want, we followed him from drumming at 5 years old in videos on YouTube through to where he is now, because the marketing machine around him made his story a big deal. So it made it look like an everyman kind of possibility.
Yes.
So that's one thing. And I did forget number 2 and 3.
Well, you'll trigger in a second. It'll come.
Do we have goals and work towards them? I never did.
Yep.
So
I never worked with goals.
I never did a business plan. I do not have dreams and I do not have goals, because my life right now is so much bigger than anything I could have ever dreamed for myself. Dreams limit me, I never imagined I would write a book. I never imagined I would have huge names chasing me and asking if they could buy rights to my online classes. I never would have thought I could have sold my first blog. It was just my thoughts, random, like lessons about photography, and I ended up with 800 of them and someone bought them. I never could have planned that stuff. I couldn't have planned to be in advertising. I couldn't have planned to, growing up in the South, being a homeschooled kid in Florida, I never dreamed I would even go to Europe, much less be living in England, So how do you get somewhere? I have a huge ethos of saying yes, like that movie Yes Man.
Yeah, I love that movie.
I
so cool.
say, yeah, sure, to loads of things. I'm very good at saying no. I know the things that aren't going to serve me well. And I have said yes to some stuff that, got me in trouble. But even those things, I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't change anything that I've ever done to get me where I am. But saying yes to things, testing things out, going, yeah, I'll meet you. So I ended up meeting you because I listen to podcasts. I'm a voracious reader. I'm an autodidact, so I teach myself anything and everything that I want to know. I go, I'm interested in engineering. I will listen to an engineering podcast. I'll listen to some audiobooks. I'll read something on the train. I always take trains where I can so that I can actually be working and being productive. If I'm driving, I'm listening to podcasts and audiobooks. So I listened to this guy's podcast, Jason Swank. Hey, Jason. And you were on there, and I was like, oh my gosh, that guy Tom is in England, and he's only a couple hours away from me. So I reached out to you and was like, hey, we're here. And now I'm sitting here talking to you now. And who knows what this will bring, So it's all just about, like, saying yes to opportunities that life presents to you and testing things out, not being afraid and being fearless and trying things out. Travel. Go to, bizarre business networking thing. I go to like these networking things at 6 o'clock in the morning, business breakfast, and I just make connections with all sorts of people and then end up with all sorts of cool contracts and relationships, and you just gotta say yes and try things.
Very interesting. Do you think so that plus relationships has been the pathway that you've taken to get to where you are and what you're doing today, sort of thing?
Yeah. I'm all about connection. Mm-hmm. I find it really important to connect with people and not be like, what can I get from you? What business do you have to offer me? I am a huge fan of Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Yeah. And I firmly believe the most important thing to people is themselves. Mm-hmm. I always want to know, what do you do? And what are you into? And people don't get that opportunity very often. Everybody's going, me, me, me. And I hate me, us, we-led advertising. When I go into a website, it's like, we love video production. I'm like, yay for you. Yeah. What do your clients love about, I'm like a potential customer. What's important to me? You haven't even bothered to try and figure that out. I saw this thing once from I was getting on a flight, and I think it was British Airways or someone, and there's a great big new banner, and it was like, we love flying or whatever. I was like,
love flying.
Oh, yay for you. A lot of us don't. We have to do it. So, yeah, connecting with people and giving people the opportunity to talk about themselves is a great way to establish a relationship. Mm.
It's funny, the one thing that, because we did a bit of a website redesign, or really more of a message redesign sort of thing, I was looking at lots of agencies to kind of get some inspiration as to what people are doing, and so many of those first pages are like, our culture or something. I was like, who honestly cares about what an agency's culture is until you really are interested in doing business with that culture, with that agency maybe. But I was just like, I don't even know really what our culture is. I think I know what we stand for and what we're about and stuff, but whether that's of interest to the first thing of interest to someone who's just visited the website, I don't think so. Yeah. Unless there's...
It just seems like a vanity. Different. It's just like a vanity project, really. Yeah. It's hard to present yourself as an option without talking about what you do. Mm. But rather than saying, I don't know, let me see what the front page of my website said. I did write it.
Now you're going to check it now, yeah?
Yeah, from idea to completion, we're your creative video department. Mm. So we have to say we, but the point is, this is what you will get. From idea to completion, you get a creative, we are your creative video department. A lot of our bigger clients have found that we are integrated into their inner workings of their company, like we are in a department of their, we're just an arm of their company. Mm-hmm. We're not like outside guys. That's one of the biggest insights that we got when we started talking to our big clients, and so that's what we put on the front page of our website. This Very is cool. What you will get. Because you are the most important thing to you. And I am the most important thing to me. It's a human insight that we would be foolish to ignore. Yeah. And to act like the most important things to us isn't ourselves. I love talking about myself right now. This is so fun. Yeah. I had this photography client once. It was a family I was shooting in the woods, and we were walking through the woods, and the dad was lagging behind. I said, what do you do? And he's like, oh, I'm in insurance. I was like, oh, cool, what kind of insurance? He's like, well, da, da, da. And the more and more I delved into it, the more I found out that the company that he works for was one of the insurers of the Titanic. Oh, and really? I have a huge interest in the Titanic disaster. For some reason, it's been like a lifelong obsession for me. Sure thing, right? Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh. So we got to talk all about that, and I learned all about the multiple insurance policies it took to insure the Titanic. It was so big, no one company could handle it. If you were a botanist, I would think you're the most interesting person in the world. Yeah. And learning all these things, it's hard to be an advertiser without having the human insight. And you can't gain human insight unless you start being curious about humans. Mm.
So I want to know a little bit more information about your creative process, like how you go about taking an idea. I mean, maybe you get ideas in the shower all the time, I don't know. But it'd be great to know how you'll go about, if a company came to you and said, all right, here's our product, or here's what we're looking to launch very soon. Do you tend to find a big idea? Do you tend to work with a slogan, for example, or do you think, right, okay, this is what, do you have a vision of here's what I imagine it to be like, and throw it around your team and they say other things, or what tends to be, is there no such like approach like that, or is it just exactly like I just described it, or how does it tend to work?
It's all of the above,
Right,
because sometimes the brief from the client will say something like, "This is the strap line we're working with. What can you you need to make something that goes with this campaign. We've already come up with the campaign. Now you need to make the stuff to flesh it out." So one time we did this, it was a competition piece, but it was for Volvic juice, and their thing was little everyday wins. They had to be 15-second ads that flesh out the idea of little everyday wins. Okay. And so one we did was succeeding at parallel parking. The other one we did was a dad who succeeded at doing a really intricate hairdo for his daughter for a party. And then the other one was guy goes to make a sandwich and there's a little tiny block of cheese left in the fridge, and he had to succeed at like actually covering the whole sandwich. And it was like a showdown with this little block of cheese. And they were all 15 seconds long, and they were all about little everyday wins. So the client made it easy for us because they said, these are the parameters that we're working within. This is the concept, run with that. Sometimes it's like, this is the product that we're advertising, go. So sometimes we'll make ourselves a strap line, and sometimes the strap line will actually be part of the ad, the idea, but sometimes it will just be like an undergirding kind of foundation that gives us something to work with. Sometimes I'll take the brief and make a new brief for our team that is a little bit more like, now this is our tailored version of this brief. Sometimes we will take stories that we already have in our mind. And I have a couple stories that I've heard from people in the past in my head, and I think someday one of these will be perfect for a brand.
So you kind of have them in the drawer, so to speak, and like ready to come out.
And sometimes I'll open the drawer in my mind and go, does one of these fit that kind of like, is there a way that we can tell this little story and like slingshot it back around to be relevant for that brand or that product or whatever? Yeah, lots of different ways to do it. In the end, no matter what avenue we take, there has to be an element of the team sitting down. Sometimes the team is just two of us. Sometimes my whole agency. Sometimes I'll pull all 10 of us into a lunchtime meeting and get everyone to ideate.
Even if they're not necessarily ideas people and creative people, bring them in as well.
That's the best, because the ideas people think like we are, have our ways. And sometimes the best ideas I get are just from my kids. I'll go, what do you think about this? And they'll be like, tell me a story about Santa Claus or something. And I'm like, oh, that is actually completely relevant. That's so brilliant. So ask kids, I don't know. It's just so many different ways to come up with ideas. But yeah, in one way or another, at some point, we have to sit down and go, what are we doing? And that takes us on a journey of some techniques and some just free flow. And sometimes we have to reconvene, go, okay, go away. You do some research into this. You start thinking about that. We'll come back tomorrow.
What would be the first kind of thing you start thinking about?
So the first thing I do, and I hate it when I watch this kind of stuff and everything's all theoretical and you're like, thanks. I feel like I learned nothing. I just watched you for an hour and I learned nothing. So let me take you through a session. I firmly believe that anybody can come up with ideas if they are given the tools. It is an art and a science. It is head and heart. It is all of the above. And I think anybody is capable of doing it if they learn a few simple things. So
cool. Okay.
The first most important thing to recognize is that we tend to, as animals, we tend to just look for the most safe, predictable route to solving a problem.
Right.
We tend to want to stay in the pack. We don't want to venture outside of our safety and our worldview. So that can get us into a lot of trouble. The first way that can get us into trouble is we tend to be vertical thinkers. So Edward de Bono, ages ago, wrote this book, Lateral Thinking. And it's about, we tend to just work up to, the idea. You'll get one idea and go, okay, great, that's the thing. Lateral thinking is about going, there's an idea, cool. There's another idea, awesome. And you just keep going. And the first most obvious ideas are usually the chaff, that blows away in the wind. You have to get those they're not bad ideas necessarily. You have to get the most obvious things out of the way first. And that's an important part of the process. Sometimes you circle back around to them.
Okay, so you'll go through all the obvious ones and just keep on writing, just keep on bringing up more and more ideas.
So I'll take you through like the cold hard, like I will take you through an ideation session in a second. But so this kind of lateral thinking is important. It's important for us to acknowledge that we quite often just want to get to a solution and stop there.
Yeah.
If you come up with a great idea, don't stop. Write it down and come up with another great idea. Come up with 50 great ideas. Don't stop just because you think you got the winner.
Yeah.
So that's the most important, that's an important thing to start with. The next thing is when you're working in the confines or in the construct of a creative team, even if it's just with one other person. And this is something I learned from Tina Fey. So I'm a huge fan of Tina Fey. I love her book, Bossy Pants. And in it, she was saying one of the most important rules of improv comedy is to never, ever shut your partner down. Mm-hmm. So if you say to me, I have a gun, you don't go, I don't go, oh, that's not a gun. Because then the gag is, it's just like, like, okay. Yeah. So if we're on the stage and we're riffing off of each other, and I say to you, I have a gun, you should be like, yes, and it's full of water, or, oh, don't shoot me with your, you have to go with it. Yeah, yeah. So the thing there is yes, and. Okay. You never say, no, it's not. That's a bad idea. So I, in the very first time I ever led an ideation session at work, I was like, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna treat this like improv, and we're never, ever gonna shut anybody down. So we never, and I am still trying to train myself in this way, so I catch myself doing it all the time, and I'm really trying not to. But we never say, but, or
right.
That's not a good idea, or we do not judge each other's ideas at all. We always, if we need to say something, we always build on it and add to it. So if you were to give an idea that really had nothing to do with what we were talking about, I wouldn't say no. I would go, yes, and how could we apply that to this brand? How could we apply that to this product? Which can actually lend to some really great ideas, because you're taking something completely outside of that realm and actually finding out how to apply it to this thing. And that's actually that's actually where some great ideas come from.
We're going to leave part 1 here for today. That's been a lot of information to digest. Next week, I'll be back with part 2, and we will start to really dig into the individual techniques that you can use for coming up with ideas to advertise your brand. Thank you so much for listening. You are such a babe. A reminder that all notes are available at youisalpha.com/podcast. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn as youisalpha, and on Instagram, I'm youalphababe. Now go leave me that review, and remember, you is kind, you is smart, you is alpha.